Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. This video is being filmed on Wednesday, whatever that is, the 9th, and it's not time dependent, it's independent, so it can be posted any time. So it's one I shall put by for the future. And it's the fact that I've just made a decision that's logical. It pushed the thoughts to people who have routines. Now, routines are great because it means you don't forget things, but it also means you might not be thinking properly. Yeah? And the biggest mistake you can make with orchids is having a watering routine, because that watering routine has dependencies, and by making it a routine you are ignoring those dependencies. That can cost you. Yeah, that can be fatal. So what are we thinking about? Most people who are growing tropical orchids are probably growing in bark. Bark, for some considerable time from new, dries out relatively quickly. This is a good thing, and I've always advised that you adjust your watering frequency to that time period. Yeah? But then you get bigger pots, smaller pots, pots full of roots, pots with hardly any roots to take into consideration, which means they're not all going to be ready to be watered on the same day. Now, I'm just about to water, that's why this has come up, and I will be watering everything except my cooler, shadier set. Yeah? That doesn't mean every pot has to have water. It will only get it if it's virtually dry. And if it isn't, it'll wait till next time, in which case it'll be bone dry. And that's better than being soaking wet and soggy. Temperatures have dropped now. I've got no daytime heat. It's currently 18 in here. It might get up to 19. This is cool. Yeah, this is cool. That's why my dehumidifier is kicking in. At these temperatures, I don't want 70–80% humidity. It's too high. And a lot of advice you get, oh, orchids do well at 75–80% humidity. Yes, they do at 25 to 28 degrees centigrade, not at 18 or 19. It's too high. You'll start getting rot issues and things. You'll also have the problem in cooler temperatures. If you've got very high humidity, the plants don't transpire as well as they should do, therefore they're not drawing water up through the plant as well as they should do, which means your feed might not be getting into them as well as it should be. There's all sorts of dependencies, and the biggest change through the year, now this doesn't matter whether you're growing in the house, in a greenhouse, in a conservatory, it doesn't matter. And I'm not talking about, people who grow outside. I can't comment on those because I don't and can't. Yeah. So this is for people who grow in some form of shelter. Greenhouse, conservatory, lean-to, house, windowsills, that sort of thing. Yeah. You are subject to day length unless you've got artificial lights. Day length has an effect on how much water your plant will use. It'll have an effect on how much feed it might need. Yeah? So all these things are dependencies, and you should be considering them. And what brought this on is, in my notes I keep track of what's got watered and with what. Yeah, whether it got fed, and if it got fed at what strength and what it made up. Whether I've used a additive or anything like that, supplement. Sorry, I couldn't get the word out. But mine pots, generally speaking, were due a relatively low level feed today. There's no point in doing high level feeds at the moment. The day lengths have dropped and the temperature's dropped. They won't use it, so it'll sit in the pot. And if it's still there next time I water, I'll be adding to it, which is silly. It's wasteful, silly, and it will aid breaking down your media. Yeah? And then you'll due a repot quicker than you might have been, which sometimes is not a bad thing. apart from the disturbance of the roots obviously. But I changed my mind. Why did I change my mind? Some plans going back into previous videos were to change my feed because my MSU feed, I believe, is going off. It's changing its chemical composition. So I've got no guarantee what I'm feeding my plants with. As I said, there was a solid lump in the main container, the one that I decant into a much smaller airtight container. And that lump obviously is due to moisture, so it's starting to go. And I thought, well, I'm not getting any more from the States, the MSU formula that I've been using, even though it's good stuff. It's well over 4 years old now since I got it. So the nearest thing to that is the Orchids rain mix. And several people in comments have said that's changed over the years. Once upon a time that was good stuff and it lasted well. You get it now, it's highly likely to turn to mush despite being in an airtight container. So it doesn't last. And that's what I was planning on getting this Saturday at the show from Orchid Accessories, from Peter White. And I've changed my mind. I'm not going to get that now. I'm going to get Dynagrow, which is a liquid feed. It's well reported, you know, it's people who've used it. And the guy who promotes it is, well, was, I believe, a partner with Peter White. And he promoted that. When Peter White used to do the Malvern show, the guy used to help him out, so he was there, and he promotes that stuff. But promoting it's one thing. Using it consistently with very high quality, awarded, show-winning plants is justification for giving it a go, rather than hearsay. He's a nurseryman. He grows fantastic orchids and has got awards coming out of his ear holes. Yeah? So that's what he uses. It obviously works, doesn't it? There's no contest. I still believe you can step back and say, probably doesn't matter what feed you use, providing it's used properly, it will probably work okay. But anyway, I'm going to switch to the Dynagrow. There's lots of different types. I'll find the one that's nearest to the MSU formula that I can. It's what my plants are used to. It won't be exactly the same, but I can get quite a close proximity, I suspect. And it's liquid, it doesn't go off. So I'm going to give that a go. And as a consequence, I won't get that till Saturday. So although I flushed all my pots and everything last time round, they're going to get another flush. Because I don't want to use any of the feed that I've currently got. And it means mixing up. Whereas if everything's going to get a flush, you know, it's just a drop of water in the bowl, water a few pots until it's gone, bit more, and continue until I've done them all. It's very easy to flush my orchids. And they're not growing much, they won't miss a feed. They just won't miss it. Things that are not getting watered though are the cymbidiums, because they are still quite actively growing. So they need some proper feed. But they can wait. They're still quite wet from bringing them in, and it's a while ago now, taking quite a long time to dry out. But they've been rained on and off with heavy rain for nearly 3 weeks without any chance to start drying out in between. You know, outside temperatures dropping down, day length shortening, it's all relative. So anyway, this is just a word about just frequencies, just getting into a routine. Things don't get forgotten, but you can also override the dependencies by having a routine. Now it might be that your lifestyle means you've got no choice. Well, so be it. If you have no choice, you have no choice. But if you've got a choice, I'd recommend you stop and think about what's going on. If you've been feeding and watering your plants all through the summer at, say, a 5-day interval or a 4-day interval, well, that probably needs to go up to 6 or 7 days at least. Now we're heading towards the colder weather and the much shorter days. Because they won't use that water and that feed at the same rate when all those dependencies start changing and kicking in. So stop and have a think. Don't just blindly stick to a routine. I watered my Phalaenopsis, it was either yesterday or the day before. 3 of them didn't get any. They were still wet. they're the ones that are due a repot. Well, 2 of them are sat there. They're going to get repotted at the show on Saturday. They were still wet because of what? It's basically because of the media that they're in is retaining water. When they've been repotted into pure bark, they won't retain water. Yeah. So whereas now their frequency could be, say, 10 days, once they've been repotted, their frequency is probably 3 or 4. Yeah. So you've got to stop and think about these things. What media, how fresh, does the plant need to stay moist or should it dry out completely? All these things are relevant to individual plants in individual types of media, in individual types of pots and size of pots. It's a lot of variables. And if you're like me, you have to average it. As I said, I'm going to water all my pots today, bar the cooler, shadier set and the cymbidiums. Everything else is going to get watered. I say that and then I take a step backwards and say, if it needs it, and only if it needs it. I'd rather see a pot get quite dry than put water in on top of a damp, slightly wet pot and not give it chance. So that's what will happen today. And as I've said, this video is totally independent. It can be posted anytime I like, so it's going to be put on the shelf to be brought out at some point when I can't film or I'm away for the day or something like that, and it'll just be food for thought. Just give these things some thought and find out to what extent, to what degree they're relevant to you and your orchid collection and your methods, your routines and everything else that goes with it. And it might mean that you need to do nothing because everything's okay. And it might need sitting down and having a think about it and working out, actually I need to do some changes and these are the changes I need to do. Those may become new routines, but they're different. And that's the important thing. Don't be rigid, be flexible. Give yourself chance to analyse, look at things, see how things are going and make changes if necessary. And you'll probably have a lot more happy orchids. And you'll probably feel better as well because you're contributing. You get into a routine, it can become so routine that the enjoyment's gone. Yeah? It can happen. There are several people that have almost given up orchids because things were going wrong, they weren't happy, but probably couldn't be bothered to change anything. Yeah? You've got to be prepared to adapt along with your orchids. They're adaptable, well, so should you be. So give it some thought and see what you come up with. You never know. As I said, you might analyse everything and think, well, as far as I'm concerned, in my place, everything's perfect. Well, great. Great. But at least you stopped and thought about it and found that out. And that's what I'm trying to get at. Give it some thought. Think about what you do, when you do it, and is it as best as it can be. You can only do that. You can only do things as best as you can. And things will get in the way. It's called life, it's called work, it's called kids, it's called all sorts of things, but there will be things that get in the way of you doing exactly what you want, and you have to make allowances. We all do that. I've got to make allowances. I try and do a video every day. Well, I won't be able to this weekend, I'm out. Probably both days, I'm not sure yet. We shall see. And I've just said this weekend. Well, that's making a dependency on when this gets posted. This might not get posted for a fortnight. In which case that statement's irrelevant because the weekend I was implying is already gone. So you take no notice of that bit. I might edit it out. Nah, can't be bothered. Anyway, that's what this was about. A chat and a think. An implied think. Have a think. Do you need to change anything? This is the time of year where things are changing relatively rapidly. Yeah, you may have just started putting your heating on in your house, whereas you haven't been using that since whatever, April. Yeah, and now suddenly your air's drying out because you've got your heating on. that will make a difference to how quickly your plants use up water. Think of what's changed, what the dependencies are, the obvious one, day length and temperatures. But think about your environment. Is there anything changing within that? Yeah, and heating is the obvious one. So there we go. And like I say, food for thought. I'll see you next time. Thanks for dropping by. And happy growing. It's not all doom and gloom. These are only thinky bits. Just have a think and see if everything is as good as it can be. See you next time.